Alizah with Morah Village. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to discuss two things. I contemplated placing both content matters into two different videos, but I think I'm going to combine it. And it'll still be a rather, short video. So two things. The first is just a quick wrap up of 1718, and then also some changes that we are making going into 1819. So let's get started. First, I have our sons write down at the end of each school year pretty much either the last day of school or the week after school has ended. They sit down, they write me down like all of their favorites and their dislikes and highs and lows and things of that nature. So I have them here on my phone. I'm going to share those because that really helps me to understand what to choose for them next school year in terms of outings and extracurricular, field trips, curricula, all that jazz. So I want to get started. One of the questions that I asked them is, what was your favorite book? And my oldest son said he loved Garbage Choice, and my youngest was My Man Blue. So that really helped me. My Man Blue is their poetry reader, which I'm actually going to change that a little bit too, so I'll talk about that. That was his poetry reader for grade 3. And then Garbage Choice was a non-traditional book for my oldest, and he tends to be a non-traditional type. So nothing surprised me there. The content matter of both, the genre speaks to both of their personalities and their interests. So I knew exactly what to pick in terms of books and literature and all that jazz. Okay, so next, I asked what was their favorite read aloud. And I read a lot of stuff last year, but they both agreed. I read them a Tricksters anthology, and it had folk, and what else? I know it had folk tales, and it had the trickster theme, and like stories and myths or what have you of from Africa that showed up in Africa as well as America as well as Latin America, and they both love that. So I bought other readers that were in that lane for our studies for this school year, and if you're interested, I can share those. I bought one like myths and folk tales from Africa. I bought like stories of courage and hope, like little quick stories in South Africa from that region. I also bought some from like the Middle East and even like the Afro-Asiatic region. So I'm hoping that they like that enough where even though it will be outside of the culture they read it from this past school year, they'll still appreciate that. Okay, so their favorite subject. Let's see. I have one who said geography. In fact, Mom, I really loved Black and Latin America. So, and he's that one. He really likes when things are Afrocentric and when it really just oozes culture and heritage that he could be proud of, that he understands and identifies with, and that connects with him, even if it's, at that time foreign until he learns it. And then the other one, science, the hands-on science. So I'll talk about that for a little bit. We spent, 24 weeks in Book Shark last year, and then the last 12 weeks I did my own hodgepodge thing, which I tend to do year to year because I like for them to study like agricultural science from an Afrocentric with a slight Arabian bend to it, and so that normally takes me somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks, and so I just reserve that time for that. And then on the back end, I always add in like genetics and like ancestry, DNA type stuff. So I always add that on the back. No matter what we're studying in science, I add that agricultural Afrocentric presence as well as that genetic DNA ancestry to the back of our studies. So even if I choose a science program and it's 36 weeks we're into scale like Book Shark was, I'm going to go through and figure out which weeks can I scratch in order to make room for that. So my youngest one, true to form, Oh, Mom, I really like the hands-on science that we did with the agricultural and the Afrocentric and the DNA type work. And he's that kid where I have one who's really heavy into like the history and literature and kind of like arts in the Afrocentric, realm. My youngest is all about like the science of that. And he's not really a science brainchild, but he really likes hearing that, black is dominant and your curly hair is dominant and your wide nose is dominant and this is what that means genetically. This is what this means in survival. This is what that means, as a sun child or an earth child, and what that means, like in terms of your intelligence and how you can communicate with the divine and all that type stuff. Like he's into that. So I have two very Afrocentric sons in kind of like two different lanes, and they both appreciate the other, but they definitely have their own niche. So that really helped me because one of the things that they asked for was, Mom, can we really spend a whole year doing agricultural science? Learning about our herbs and our soil and the ground and how we connect to it as Africans and how we communicate to it and this source of this power that's causing us to exist, but also growing our food and our sun and all that type of stuff. They're very interested in learning about that, as well as like the healing powers behind herbs and medicines, etc. So they really, made me have to dig deep. And I designed a whole course for them where they, would learn that. And so, but it was that feedback that really helped. So I had to kind of do both. It's a science class, so I really had to focus more on the science. But I did a lot of history and stuff with it so that my oldest could appreciate it just as much. So I kind of, combined that to benefit both of them. Okay, so I asked what was like your favorite event or your favorite outing, and both of them hands down said they really love the Alvin Ailey theater performance. So our homeschool group, we go every single year, and we went in February this past school year, but this current calendar year, we went in February, and it was a really, really nice production. They enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And so I'm definitely going to add that back to their calendar for this coming school year. Then I also asked them what was their favorite class. So we do a lot of enrichment classes in general and in our homeschool group. And my oldest said that he really liked the class for Ida B. Wells. So if you're in my homeschool group, you know who taught that class. Shout out to you. He really loved your class. And my youngest really liked the Black Pioneer class that we took also with our homeschool group. So, and I was very happy that they both were African American centered and they both found value out of that. And so, true to form, my oldest was all about the history that came with Ida B. Wells, while my youngest was, they had stations set up at the Black Pioneer class, and so he was able to like make pickles and what else did they make? Ice cream, butter, that type of thing. And so he is going to be more in that lane. So that doesn't surprise me either. So I did sign them up for some classes and some enrichments that continued in that stead for them. And then probably my favorite, I asked them, what was your favorite lesson? And they both had a lesson out of our history and literature of the Tanakh course that I wrote. So I was excited about that. I guess when your mom writes lessons and curricula for a living, I guess I don't quite do it for a living, but I do it professionally. They always ask, Mom, did you write this? Did you make this? And so when I say yes, and they're like, I really like this, that always makes my mama heart and my teacher heart happy. So my oldest really liked, he said, I really like learning about the Mesopotamia area. I really like seeing the brown people and the curly hair. And then he really liked Hammurabi's Code. He liked, and we talked about like the 7 universal laws, Hammurabi's Code, and then we compared it with the Law of Moses or the 10 Commandments. and we saw the similarities there, and so he really really liked talking about all these things that existed before Moses. And of course, because there's like 7 universal laws and 10 commandments, there was 3 more that was there with Moses. And so we talked about, what could have happened in time where these 3 needed to be added, or what could have happened in time where these people needed these extra 3 from like the 7 universal. So he really enjoyed that. And then my youngest really liked learning about Egypt, particularly the archaeological digs that I scheduled with their courses. I mean, he loved the digging, like physically digging, but he really liked, well, Mom, every time we found a piece, we found a stone or a jewel or an artifact, you could tell us what that was. And I really like learning, like as I'm digging, I can find something and I can see what this is. So, I mean, it didn't hurt that I had went to Egypt the previous school year. So I had a lot of information to share with them. So they really, really loved that. And I showed them pictures of me in Egypt, and the things they were seeing in the books I had as actual pictures in my phone or on my computer, and they were really excited about that. Okay, so I used all of that to determine like what I'm going to teach or how I'm going to teach it or what I want to place them in. And I also asked them like what were some lows or what wasn't, your favorites. I don't really like to just, talk about curriculum in a negative or in a con-like way unless it's just like purely fact or just, something that's not just working. Like if you have this type of learner, this won't work. So I don't want to go into what they did not like specific, well, they didn't like really specifically like curriculum names. But I will say, I won't be returning to the science that we had earlier. Even though I like the format or whatnot, they really needed more. And I had spoiled them. They were used to more with science and pretty much with all their subjects because I tend to just teach real meaty. So I'm just going to stick to me putting that together. Either I'm writing it or I'm compiling, a series of things that'll come together and be what they need. And then I also got some feedback with math, which is why I've changed some of the math that we're doing. And I've already spoke about that in all the videos I've shot this past summer, so I won't bore you with that. So let's get into the changes. Okay, so going into the 18-19 school year, we schooled the past school year 4 days a week with kind of like a bonus of 1 day. We're still going to pretty much keep that up. However, the scheduling is going to be a little bit different. So one of the things that I learned by having a 6th grader was planning the work in between took a lot more time than it was like in elementary school. And seeing how I have both of them in a transition, not quite, because my oldest son just recently finished a transition year. So he's going into just like a regular active year. However, it's on the heels of a transition year. So we have a little, touch and go work to do in the beginning of the year. My youngest son is going into like a mini transition year because in grade 4, I start to make a divide between lower primary and upper primary. So I have my hands full with 2 children being in those 2 grades that I make those adjustments for. So what I was typically doing with scheduling was we would school 6 weeks on, and then we'd take a week off. And in that week, I would do some organization and some, some mini planning because the school year is already planned for. But those like unit or term planning and get ready and kind of just reset and readjust for the next 6 weeks. So I decided to extend the year because I need more than a week. I needed more than a week this past year, and I was running on fumes trying to do everything in a week's time. And then I felt like by the time we got to that following Monday, I really didn't have a rest because it was so much. Whereas in all the years previous, it really just took me 2 days, maybe 3 to do that. And then I got to rest the other 2.5 to 3 days of the rest of the week, and so it was fine. But that was not the case in grade 6. So I only can imagine now grade 7 and grade 4, with neither of them being in lower primary school, I'm going to need more time. So what we're going to do is we're still going to school 6 weeks on, and then we're going to take 2 weeks off. So, of course, that extends the year. So we were not traditional, like, year-rounders. What we were before was we still had a, traditional school year that could range between 32 and 36 weeks, depending on how I had laid it out. And then we had a 10-week summer break where the first 2 weeks on the front and the last 2 weeks on the back, they took a break. So then the 6 weeks in the middle, we did summer school. That's how we've always done it. But now I'm going to make an adjustment where we have 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So I have 1 week to, reset and put all their plans, reorganize, and then I have another week to rest before we start back. So, of course, that extends out my year. So I have us now, we would typically end in like April or May. So now we're not ending until pretty much the last week of June. So they're going to have July. They'll have July off. And then we will do some study skills and, brush up on some things the first 2 or 3 weeks in August before we resume school. The last week of August, the first week of September-ish. I normally start, how I determine the week that we'll start school is I start with a feast. It's a cultural feast that we keep, Feast of Tabernacles or Sukkot. I look at where that falls in the year, and then I count up 6 weeks. I want that to be my first 6 weeks off. And then whatever week that falls on, that's the week that we're going to start school. Essentially, that's how I've been doing it for the past, 3 or 4 years. So we're going to start the 18-19 school year the week of August 27th, and then we'll have our break 2 weeks, and that's just how I'm going to continue to do it. The only other adjustment is I would, over the December break, I would take 2 weeks off, and now this current school year I'm going to take 3 off, so that I have a week to plan, and then I have 2 weeks to rest for our festivities and family gatherings, etc. Okay, what else are we changing? This is the first year where I've outsourced courses for both of them. So typically I have taught them everything as it related to core subject matter. And they've had classes like art or PE, music, electives or specials. But their core, subject-based classes have been here. But I'm going to outsource one of them. So they're both taking Spanish, and it's not with me. So our homeschool group has hired a Spanish company to teach us all in a class form. And so I registered both of them, and they are going to each take that class, and I feel comfortable with that because they are in grade 4 and grade 7. They can navigate a computer. They can interact with their peers without necessarily needing me as well as their teacher. And so I'm pretty sure I'll be hanging there in the background, but they're going to try that. And so I'm excited to see what that looks like. My oldest has done that already, I believe, once before, but it was smaller sections, like a 6-week course or a 12-week course, but never all year. This is your teacher for this content matter. So that's new for us. We're excited about that. And let's see, another new thing is my youngest is going to graduate to piano. So I've been doing music lessons with them, actual reading music, and they have a music curriculum that we've been doing for him K through 3rd. And then after that, they have a good little music theory understanding. They graduate to, I hire, a piano teacher, and they do that. So he's going to be joining, and I'm excited to see what he can do in piano. And then what else are we? They have each been accepted into Beta Club. So we're going to be doing Beta Club for the 18-19 school year. I'm excited to see what that looks like. My oldest is up for an officer position, and they are very, very excited about convention already. We still have a while to go, but I've been like walking them through, what Beta Club is, what it means, what are your responsibilities, here are some options for you, and they both express interest in the convention. So we are excited about that. Our next change is so beginning in grade 4, I require a professional day. And so obviously my oldest, already being in 4th grade, has done this already. But now my youngest son is in 4th grade, and so they'll both be doing their professional day. So we take them out and they just get a few shirts, ties, jackets, and one day out of the week, they have to come to school dressed in their professional attire. And we normally just decide on what day that is. They've already decided on what their day is because they're excited about that. So, of course, my youngest is excited to join that. I'm still contemplating maybe kind of raising the bar and allowing my 7th grader or requiring my 7th grader to do a professional day twice out of the week. But right now, we just have the one day. So what we typically do is we have like a school day where they wear their school shirts. And then we have a pajama day, and then we have a professional day, and then the other day it's kind of like a bonus. So how that works is a pajama day, obviously, this is our one day to kind of just be a little lazy with getting dressed, and we can just relax and chill. And then our school day is just like a little school pride. We're going to wear our shirts that have our school name on it. And then the professional day, which of course doesn't start until grade 4, so they've had other days earlier than that. They really love Tacky Day, but I can't do it anymore. We'll do it like when it's homeschool spirit week, but I don't want to commit weekly. They're a little bummed about that. Oh well, you're growing up, and we just have to be more serious with things like that. Plus, it would just end up in a lot of laundry for me. So, which is cute when they're like, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, but come on. So I probably surprise them here and there with it, but I don't want to commit weekly to it. So they've done things like that before, but we've kind of always had a staple of school pride. We've always had a staple of pajama day, and we've always had a staple of professional day beginning in grade 4. So that's what we're going to do. Another change that we have is like our fine art study or elective study, if you will. What we've done was we've done poetry study, nature study, visual artist study, and like musician/composer study. And once a week, we just kind of did each of those for 4 weeks for a whole month. So 1 week was poetry, 1 week was nature, 1 week was visual artist, 1 week was a musician/composer. Well, they're getting older now, and so we need to spend more time on a particular topic of interest, and they don't have as much time in the day to re-up to that frequency. So I've had to make some adjustments. So poetry, we are going to do poetry, but it won't be like, okay, here's our Fine Art Friday, and this is the poem we're studying. And then next Friday, this is our composer, and here's the composer we're studying. They want to dive a little deep, and I do too, if we're studying a composer, not just kind of a brief intro, this is Duke Ellington, and he's of the jazz era, and he played these instruments, and he's important to African Americans because with the color sheet and a listening sample and pretty much out of there, right? We're going to do something a little bit different. So I am going to, with poetry, I'm going to read them a poem once a week, and we'll discuss kind of like tea time, if you will. It really won't be tea time, but in that lane. With nature, we're going to do nature once a month, and I've centered it around the full moon because we already keep up with it, and that's easier. So once a month, somewhere in the week of the full moon, we'll do a nature study on all that is transitioning with nature in that month. And normally the transitions come with the full moon. Not every transition does, but we're just going to focus there because that's easier for us. And then we're down to visual artists and composers. So I'll do another video probably about this. We are going to choose 2 to study for 2 months at a time. So we'll have 2 for September, October, 2 for November, December, again January, February, again March, April, and then again May, June, where we're spending 2 months learning about the visual artist and the composer. And one of my sons is really into like film and media, digital art, the other one. So I opened up visual artistry to not just painters and sculptors and photographers, but also like set design on movies, cartoonists, illustrators, and I'm forgetting one, I believe, directors. So they are going to choose. Well, matter of fact, they already did it. They already wrote out who they wanted to learn about. That ends up being 10, so 5 and 5. So we're just going to throw them in a box, draw our 5, and that'll be what we do for the year. So maybe I'll share a video to reveal who that is. But in the musicians/composers, I specifically asked them to concentrate on pianist, since the piano is going to play a large role in both of their lives this school year. And I saw they had like some Nina Simone and Ray Charles. I saw them writing down some John Singleton and Gordon Parks. So we'll figure out what ends up being the 5 we're going to choose. And then I'm creating a visual artist / musician study for them with the people that we end up drawing. And so if you're interested in knowing how I'm going to do that or what I'm using or who we actually are going to study, please let me know in the comments, and I will do my best to either shoot another video or share what it is that we're going to do. Okay, I wanted to share, yes, one last thing, and that is our year at a glance. So I've gotten questions about this. I'm only going to talk about this as it relates to our change, and then if I end up getting more questions, it may warrant doing another video. So here is another, change that we're doing. I was doing something like this anyways, but I finally just, hammered down, ripped the Band-Aid, and sat down and just did it. So I have an Excel spreadsheet, and I just took all of their curricula, whether it was something I put together or sometimes like their writing. I didn't put together their writing. I just buy the book, and we're going to do it pretty much as written. Their spelling, same thing like that. So here's my sheet, and I just color code it to keep up with the grade level and the subjects. So this is just our first semester. So that's another thing. Our semester changed because of how I rescheduled it. So now we're talking about our semester running. We are starting school the very last week of August, but I'm just saying September for an even flow is like September to January, and then the next semester is February to June. So we just have that adjustment. So I had to make that change here. So this is my first time dumping in an Excel sheet like this. I've only just carved it out by hand and kept on, but the older they get, the more work they're doing, and it's just easier if it's on the computer. So this is another transition for me, is sitting down and dumping this into an Excel spreadsheet that I can print and keep up. And actually, since I've been doing like our preschool or our orientation type work prior to school, this has helped greatly for them to just, and I have like my little hand copy that I've sketched up, but to have this copy, I can print it many times, and they can easily like just read it and see it clearly. So I hope that was helpful. So those are our major changes and transitions. I hope you learned something, gained something from this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe. Until next time, shalom.